Man, just look at that. If paint plus stain and a dresser could be the equivalent of a tuxedo, this would be it. In today's video, we'll learn how to get this look from that, as well as go over a few newbie mistakes I made myself in the beginning. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you missed the announcement last week, Sabby Chic has now changed to sabsrehabs in order to make it easier to find me on YouTube. This is a laminate top mid-century piece that I found off Facebook Marketplace for $100. It has some chips in the veneers and scratches all over, but we're going to give it a whole new look. Alright, let's start by removing the hardware. A lot of mid-century pieces have unique hardware and I really like these, so I'm going to keep the original hardware with the dresser. Alright, I have all the handles removed and the drawers pulled out, so it's time to get to cleaning. I'm using Simple Green's all-purpose cleaner in a diluted formula. I spray a little amount on top of the surface, scrub it with a kitchen sponge, and then go back over it either with a towel or some paper towels to remove any dust, grime that has built up on the surface. Cleaning pieces of furniture isn't very fun, and it is actually one of the dirtiest parts of flipping furniture, but it is necessary to start with a clean surface so your paint or primer has a good surface to adhere to. And we're going to jump right into mistake number 1 that I made as a newbie furniture painter. I used to just wipe my pieces off with a damp cloth and then get to painting. Dirt, oil, and grime on your surface leads to your paint or primer not sticking correctly, and eventually over time it will chip. So basically you would put in a lot of hard work for your piece to not last you very long. I made sure to clean the entire surface of the dresser, the front of the drawers, the inside of the drawers, and the inside of the body of the dresser, just to make sure I can remove as much dust as possible. Alright, now we have all the dirt and grime removed. Let's remove any remaining cleaner left behind. So I grab a bowl of warm water and a damp cloth and just go over the piece and rinse it completely. If you're new to the channel, I've been flipping furniture for 8 years. So if you like learning things like properly prepping your pieces, painting, staining, protecting them for long-lasting pieces, you're definitely in the right place. So go ahead and like, subscribe, and hit that bell to get notifications. After the surface is dry, it is time to start repairs. I'm using plastic wood, all-purpose wood filler to fill in that chipped veneer. This is a wood filler that I like to use in the areas that I'm going to stain. I let that dry for about an hour and then it was time to get to sanding. Today I'm using my electric vacuum 3x4 sander from Surf Prep Sander. I'm using 150 grit sandpaper on this laminate top. So laminate tops are known for being very slick and paint not adhering to it. So I definitely want to get a really good scuff sand so my paint and primer have a nice surface to adhere to. You don't have to have a fancy Surf Prep sander by any means. An orbital sander or even sanding this by hand in a sanding sponge would be just as effective. It's just a lot faster with the Surf Prep sander. So the drawers have some curvy detail to them. So I grab one of my sanding foam pads from the Surf Prep sander in the coarse because part of the drawers I want to stain. So I grab a coarse grit to remove the finish of the drawers. The foam pad just makes it easy to go over the curves, but it's just not removing the finish as fast as I would like. So I go ahead and scuff sand the surface of the drawers for the areas that I will be painting and then switch up what I'm using to sand. Here, I switched it up to one of the sanding screens. This is a 150 grit sanding screen, which is making the process a lot faster. I didn't really want to go any lower than that because the drawer fronts are veneer, and veneer is very thin and it's easy to break through, so I wanted to be extra careful. I went slow and took my time and got all the previous finish removed in the areas that I want stained on the drawers. For some reason, whenever I originally saw this piece on Facebook Marketplace, it just screamed two-tone, and I'm so glad I went with that look. After sanding, I grabbed a damp, lint-free cloth and went over the entire surface just to remove any dust residue. While I waited for the surface to air dry, I went on my back patio and had a cup of coffee and watched my dogs play. For primer, I'm using Zinsser's Shellac Base Primer. You can brush it on, roll it on, or spray it on. For easy clean up, I am using a disposable microfiber roller. You can see some of the spots on the edge there where I broke through the previous finish down to the wood. Spots like that will bleed through, so you definitely need to prime those. I am painting this piece black, so technically the black paint would cover and you wouldn't see any bleed through on those edges, but the top of this dresser is laminate, and laminate is very slick, so it does require primer when you're painting over laminate. And this leads right into Newbie mistake number 2 and 3. First one is I used to never prime my pieces. I used to just wipe it with a damp cloth and slap the chalk paint on there. Prime your pieces. It will make them last longer, I promise. My next mistake that I made as a new furniture painter is I primed everything white. There are different kinds of primer: shellac base, water base, gray, tintable, yes, and even black primer, which is what I should be using to prime this piece, but I didn't have any stock, so I went with the white. I let the surface dry for an hour, and then I came back with a 150 grit piece of sandpaper over a sanding sponge and went over the surface to knock back any brush or roller marks that were left. And then I wiped the piece off with a lint-free cloth to remove any residue from sanding the primer. If you guys would like to know when I prefer to use shellac-based primer versus water-based primer, and the very few cases that I don't prime at all, just let me know down below in the comments and I will include that in a video for you. Today I'm using Fusion Mineral Paint in Coal Black. This is a paint that has primer, paint, and top coat all in one. I know it's an all-in-one paint, but if you've watched any of my other videos, you know me, you know that I prime, I go ahead and paint, and I go ahead and protect all of my pieces myself. My goal for my business is to always produce quality pieces that last for years to come for my clients. The paint itself has fantastic coverage and goes on very smoothly. It is self-leveling. I don't buy into the all-in-one paint primer, all that, but with the self-leveling feature, there's hardly any brush strokes left behind at all. And it just feels smooth and fantastic when it dries. So this will definitely be a paint that I use from now on. If you are local to the Oklahoma City metro, I have my furniture booth where I sell my painted furniture out of Feather Nest in War Acres, and in there is a Fusion mineral paint section, and the lady was so kind to give me a pint of the Fusion mineral to try out, and I am so glad that she did because I love this paint. I took a break from painting and thought about life and thought for a second maybe I was stuck on the floor, but nah, I'm not quite that old yet. So back to work it was for me. Next newbie mistake I made was not taping the inside of my dresser. Just look how sloppy that looks. So I taped the inside of the dresser to give it a more professional look. I let the paint dry for 2 hours, lightly went over the surface with a fine grit sanding sponge. I will make sure to link that in the description for you guys. And then wipe the surface free of any dust residue with a lint-free cloth. And then I applied a thin second coat. This paint has such great coverage that 2 coats gave me full coverage. Fusion paint does have a 2-hour waiting time between coats of paint, but it has a 12-hour waiting period before you apply a top coat, so I let the paint set overnight. And that leads me to mistake number 5 that I used to make as a brand new furniture painter. I wouldn't let my pieces set for the required dry time. I know it's super hard to be patient sometimes, but these products have a suggested drying time for a reason, so just follow the directions. And then one of my favorite parts is removing that painter's tape and then seeing those nice crisp lines. I got a little carried away painting in one spot, so I just grabbed some 120 grit sandpaper and lightly removed that spot. That's so nice, just perfectly painted lines. And then just look how much better the inside of the dresser looks. Doesn't it look amazing? So much more professional. All right, now that the paint is dry, let's go ahead and stain. I'm using Varathane's Premium Wood Stain in the American Walnut. You can brush stain on, use a foam brush, but I prefer to use a clean piece of old t-shirt. This stain is so easy to use. I just wiped it over the areas that I wanted to stain, let it set for about 3 minutes, and then went back over with a lint-free cloth to remove any excess stain. If you want a darker wood stain look, you can repeat the process again to get it darker after the required drying time, but I liked 1 coat, so I just went with 1 coat of stain. Alright, while the stain dries, I went to work on the handles. I'm using Rust-Oleum's Metallic in the gold, and I just put a coat of spray paint on the back side of the knobs and on the handles, let that dry for an hour, came back, flipped it over, did 2 coats on the front side, and then I used Rust-Oleum's clear finish in the matte to protect the handles. I let the stain in the handles dry overnight. The next morning, I used that fine grit sanding sponge, went over all the surfaces, and then I wiped it free, dust free, with a lint free cloth. For extra protection, I'm using Fusion's Furniture Wax in Field of Lavender scent. This stuff smells so amazing. The piece is painted dark, so I'm using a dark piece of t-shirt to work the wax into the paint. And I kind of work in sections going in a circular motion and then go back over it in long strides going with the brush strokes. Their wax is non-toxic and is scented with 100% essential oils. It wipes on so easily like melted butter and then feels smooth like glass when it's dry. I let the piece sit for about 30 minutes with the wax on it and then came back over it with a lint-free cloth to remove any excess wax. Fusion mineral paint takes 21 days to cure. The wax takes 30, so this leads into my last newbie mistake. If you sell pieces before they are cured, make sure you let your customers know. It just keeps your clients from being too aggressive with the piece too soon and scratching it. Then I kind of went nuts with the wax and put it everywhere. On the drawer slides, the bottom of the drawers, the inside of the drawers. This stuff smelled so good, I just couldn't stop myself. Look how beautiful that looks with the light pouring in on it. Don't you wish it was in your house? All right, let's get the hardware back on. It's really starting to come together. I just love that look. All right, let's take a look at our before and our after. I just love that combination of the black paint with the American walnut stain, and the gold handles pop just enough. I think this piece turned out very handsome, or dapper if you will. I hope you guys like it just as much as I do. I know in the beginning I told you I bought this for $100 off Facebook Marketplace. I don't have it listed because this piece is actually staying with me in my house. That's how much I love the look. If you haven't already, go ahead and like, subscribe, and hit the bell. A little bit of action grows my YouTube channel a long ways. If you want to see more of my furniture flips, I'll put a couple up here that I think you might like. As always, until next time.